So I just got out of Power Rangers and I feel a little bit like I'm in Bizarro World because the character's pretty good. The action? Power Rangers is a remake of the 1993 series, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which came out when I was in the 6th grade, so I did watch it and I did like it, but in secret. But if you're unfamiliar with the show, the basic premise is there's an evil lady named Rita Repulsa that wants to get something from a city called Angel Grove, and she will do anything to get it using her evil powers. So 5 teenagers with attitude are selected to become superheroes to stop her, and they are mentored by a guy named Zordon, and they have big gigantic robot things called Zords to battle big gigantic monsters that Rita summons. But if you go into this movie expecting that, you will be quite disappointed because this movie's not really that. In fact, the majority of this movie is really much more like The Breakfast Club with superpowers than it is like the old Mighty Morphin Power Rangers TV show. In fact, the action in this doesn't really get started at all until 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the movie. So while I did watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when it first debuted, I have no loyalty to it. It didn't define my childhood at all. It's just a show that I watched for a year and then I outgrew it. So for me, I'm just watching this as a guy watching a movie that wanted to have a good time, and I most definitely did have a good time. So let's talk about the good. The best thing about this movie is the cast and their chemistry together. Specifically the Rangers. I mean, I don't know who any of these people are. I don't think I've seen them in anything before. And they just work together so well. Some of them are really good actors. The 2 standouts being Billy, who's actually on the autism spectrum, but the character's, it's handled so well and he's so likable in The 2 standouts being Billy, the character's actually on the autism spectrum, and it's handled so well, and he's so likable, and the actor just does a great job of developing this character through the performance, and then well as the Jason character, the leader of the Rangers, who in some ways feels like he's going to be a certain type of cliche character. In certain ways he is, but it works within the story, and they give enough nuance to it and enough twists and turns that it makes a very unique and interesting new take on kind of this football player turned team leader character. Likewise, throughout the movie, there's actually a pretty strong sense of humor. I think I'm going to actually mention several things how this is kind of like the MCU, but in the same way that they have kind of these little one-liners throughout them that are just kind of tied in. It's not a comedy, it's not laugh out loud funny, but it's just like quirky little quips that people say in real life that work in the context of the movie. Another big surprise for me was the eye that the director brought to the film. He actually had a style that kind of was throughout the whole film. Early on, there's like a car chase, not a big flashy car chase, but small scale car chase, and it's exciting only because the perspective that the director gives us and the way he shoots it and the things that happen, it's very interesting, unique. It's not something that I've seen before, and I wasn't going into this movie thinking at all that I'd be like, oh yeah, there was a car chase with a very interesting perspective. And there's all sorts of little details like that throughout the movie where he found a way to shoot things that were interesting and gave you the perspective of the people that were experiencing it. And finally, you got to give credit to the director and the studio for taking kind of a chance on the direction that they went with this, in that it's so character-based and action-light. And I say that both maybe as a positive and a negative, but the first 3/4 really do not have action in it, and it's dedicated to their training and their character development and them coming together as a team and developing all that aspects of it, that certainly the studio is taking a gigantic risk by allowing them to do that, because there's not a lot of schlock here. There's not just a lot of pandering to the action and the big gigantic robots or anything like that. It's character moments that make this movie work, and that's full credit to the studio for letting that happen and the director for handling that aspects rather well. With that said, let's move into the bad, and there's some problems here. And it's the third act. As soon as the Zords show up, as soon as they're Power Rangers, it's like we switch into a different movie. We morphed into a totally different movie as soon as they morph into their suits. And I mean, it's literally just like that. We go from this grounded kind of character study about relationships between characters, and we go, it's morphin' time. And they morph, and it's not directed as well. The fights are clumsy. It's clunky. The pacing gets off. Like, immediately it goes into them in their suits fighting kind of the version of the putties in this, the rock monster type deals. And that lasts for, a minute or something. Like, it's so quick the way it cuts from like them in water and them on top of a mountain, and then they go off to do something else, and it just cuts really quickly. And everything up to this point in time in the movie had a nice pacing to it, and it was handled nicely, not clunky, not choppy. And then suddenly this was choppy. And very much so, like the director's style, all the praise I was giving it, all that's gone as soon as we get to the action. As soon as the Power Rangers as Power Rangers show up, all of that is gone. All the finesse is gone. And there's really nothing in the third act, whether them in their suits, them in the Zords, Megazords, that I thought was anything interesting. That's very strange to go into a Power Rangers movie and be like, oh man, the Power Rangers accent, not so good. Oh, but the Breakfast Club moments, those were great. I loved that stuff. That's a weird reaction to the movie, but that really is the case. Also, the other thing you're going to see in a lot of reviews, I'm sure, is that Rita Repulsa feels like she's in a different movie. And it's not just, the performance, which the performance is way over the top, but the way it's written, the way it's handled, it just feels like it's from a different movie. And the way the character in itself is handled is very much like a Marvel movie, where the villain is kind of introduced early on and kind of slowly builds up and then shows up with her evil scheme in the third act, but really just kind of sprinkled throughout. Not a major part, not developed. There's not a whole lot there. It's just an evil person with a goal that needs to be stopped, very much like so many of the MCU villains. But very much so, where the lead characters are all very grounded. They feel like actual high schoolers with backstories, and then you cut to her, and it's just, mustache twirling villain, or in her case, evil witch lady with powers that cackles and does evil things because she's evil. And it just feels out of place in the movie that we're watching until the third act, where everything just goes bonkers and over the top. And maybe this is me just being nitpicky, but like as soon as they're in their armor, within like 1 minute, their masks come off. Like the helmet is on, but the mask is off so that you can see their face. All the stuff in the posters where the helmet and the mask, no, 1 minute of them actually like that, and then like 15, 20 minutes of their faces exposed and them in Zords, and it just feels like some studio executive being like, we gotta be able to see their faces, so take the masks off as quick as possible. I hate that stuff. And one final thing before I go into my rating of it, this very much is a movie for people that did watch Power Rangers, not for people that do watch Power Rangers. And by that I mean it's not a kid's movie at all. You're in the first 3-4 minutes of the movie and there's a joke about milking a male cow. There's a scene where a girl goes skinny dipping and is swimming in her bra and panties. There's a lot of scenes with Rita Repulsa that are just very freaky and creepy and weird. It is not a kid's movie. It's very much for teenagers and older and people that enjoyed Power Rangers when they were much younger. All in all, I really did enjoy the first 3/4 of this movie quite a bit. I dropped the score on it a little bit because of the third act disappointing me so much. I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Much higher than I thought I was going to, but the characters really are quite strong. I can see myself rewatching this a number of times. There is not a lot of action in it, and when there is action, it's not very good, and all the cool styling that's in the first 3/4 disappear as soon as the third act begins, and it's just kind of, it happened. If I'm being honest, I do recommend you go see this movie in the theater, and I think that this movie's title is going to be its biggest hurdle to getting a lot of people to go see it. My wife would have no interest in seeing this movie because it's called Power Rangers. I'm pretty sure she would really like this movie quite a bit, and I actually hope that people do go out and see it because I want to have a second one of these movies, because I want to have the perfect mix of the Breakfast Club relationships of this movie combined with much better Power Rangers action in a second movie with my Green Ranger that, like everyone else, I love. With that said, I've got one more thing for you. But I don't want to just talk about movies, I want to talk about movies with you. How about you? What did you think about the movie? Did it live up to the original series? Did you hate the original series but enjoyed this movie? Tell me in the comment section below. I would love to hear your opinion. Also, if you're new to my channel, please consider clicking that subscribe